Hey guys, I'm gonna be back really quick. I'm gonna be back in 5 minutes. I'll see you guys in a second. Alrighty, guys. I don't know if you can hear me, but I am coming back. So what I like about doing it from the PC is that I can use this microphone. You can hear me from far away. But anyways, hey guys, welcome. Let me know if you guys can hear me properly. Should be this microphone, so I should be able to do around stuff around the workshop, the lab, and talk with you guys at the same time. I'm busy cleaning it up. I have one more order and package up, and then yeah, I'll just focus on cleaning. But anyways, how you doing? Awesome, awesome. As usual, if you have any questions, feel free to drop down. I saw you on the other thing. Yeah. I don't know, man. I don't, like that was a. I'm kind of glad you brought that up because I wanted to go on a bit of a rant, but I mean, so I don't know if you know the full background. I guess I'll give the full background on that. So there's this other YouTuber called Tech Ingredients. Um, I feel like they're just I feel like, I mean, not paranoid. It's kind of understandable. Okay, let me just start over from the beginning. There's other YouTuber called Tech Ingredients. All right, they're really cool YouTubers. They do a lot of stuff. But they did a live stream about a month ago, and I wanted to, drop in a super chat, be like, hey, I'm developing this ion exchange membrane. It's open source, blah 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 blah. And then, right as I was about to send that, another user actually dropped a super chat and was like, hey, have you heard about this ion exchange membrane by Robert Karras? And I'm like, wait, what? I had to ask my friend because me and my friend were actually planning, he's the one who recommended me to drop that super chat. Uh, and I'm like, hey, did you send this? He's like, no. So like someone completely like I have no association with sent a super chat. Then I'm like, okay, I guess I should send my super chat, be like, hey, I developed this membrane. I'd love to do a collab or whatever, blah blah blah. But I think there was like one or two users. I was like, hey, this sounds a little suspicious, right? Like, it seems a little coordinated. And again, I swear on my life, this was completely not coordinated. Um, so I feel like that was the cause of them being. No, Nelson, no, that wasn't yours. It was a month ago. Someone else a month ago. It was someone else. Anyways, that was a month ago. So I sent them emails. I reached out to them, because they told me on the stream, hey, reach out to our emails and we'll talk. Reached it out. No response, no response, no response. Sent it a couple times, to the various emails because the one on the website wasn't working. So I sent to their Gmail, and anyways, I tried to everything I could, no response. So then I went to their Patreon. They have a Patreon. And if you look up on their Patreon, they have like this $50 tier that you could pay for a Zoom call, which I actually really like, right? I have my consultation services, for $150 for 30 minutes. Why? Because, again, I get it, right? A lot of people want to talk to me one-on-one and have a chat, just nerd out. But of course, I can't do that with everyone. So I either just completely close off my communication, or at least provide that service. So if someone wants to talk and nerd out, or they have questions and they want one-on-one help on their project, they can ask for that, right? Because otherwise they're locked out. Let's say someone wants to talk to Tech Ingredients, be like, hey man, I have this question about this process. I want to pay you, a couple $100, whatever, $50, whatever it is, right? Whatever you set your time as. I want to be able to pay you and talk to you one-on-one and ask you questions. Like, that's a service I think a lot more YouTubers need to provide. And they were providing that on their Patreon. So I bought it, $50, and no response. Again, I tried reaching out. No response. So, I kind of gave up, but I figured, hey, one last time, let's go and talk on next time he does a live stream. He did the live stream today. I'm like, hey, let me pop up and talk to him. And again, right as I was actually, no, I sent it. I think I sent it, and then Nelson. So anyways, I sent the $5 super chat. I'm like, hey, I paid $50 for this Patreon Zoom call thing and never got a response. And then Nelson also posted a comment like, oh, I basically at the same time. He's like, hey, have you seen this membrane technology by Robert? And they were like, oh yeah, we'd really like to, that's something we'd like to do, but it's hard. And I don't know, it's weird. They like very quickly skimmed through my question, and it's like, really? So like I spent $50 for that. Like, that's it, so yeah, I definitely, I don't know, my I'd say optimistic or positive side is being like, hey, maybe they're just seeing a couple of people bring it up at once, and maybe they like are apparent. I'm not blaming anyone. Again, please guys, if you share it. If someone wants to listen, they'll listen. If they don't, then they don't, right? So definitely sharing is the most important thing. But my best guess is maybe they saw me pushing that and pushing a little hard, and they thought like I'm some sort of grifter or whatever. I'm not sure, but tried my best. There's an analogy, right? Like you bring a horse to a well or to a water or whatever, but you can't make it drink. I don't know what the analogy for this would be. It's like a horse says you need to give it a bank, a crate of fruit, in order for it to go and have a taste of that water. And you go get it that crate of fruit, whatever, for $50, and it doesn't even look at the water. It just doesn't even eat the fruit. It just walks away. It's like so sad, It's like, what at that point, what can you do to help someone? Like, what can you do to make someone, have a better life, right? I mean, that's the society we live in. How many people, have very terrible lives, and they realistically, a lot of them can very easily have a better life. And there's a lot of people offering them opportunities to have a better life, but they don't want to, and we think of it as just a certain class of people in society, but really it goes from the bottom to the top. It's everyone, absolutely everyone. It's almost a sin we have in humanity, but maybe in some aspects I have that myself. So whatever it is, at least I tried my best. I knew I tried my best, and I know that eventually when this does take off, then I'll remember those people. But anyways, let me read some of the comments. They're having trouble at the moment with YouTube, so give them some grace. I'm sure it'll get to you, especially when you've said it. This has been a wild thing, Kieran. I mean, again, when someone pays you $50 for a Zoom meeting, like that's through Patreon. I didn't do that through YouTube. I did that through Patreon. So, can't really blame YouTube for that. I hate to say it, but sometimes YouTubers don't respond to other YouTubers until they meet in person, and also you need to be more diplomatic, even if it's upsetting. Maybe I could be more diplomatic. but the reason why I'm so non, you could say even hostile about these interactions I have these with these various YouTubers is because, in my opinion, this is a really, really serious problem, right? Again, imagine you're a guy, right? Forget about me. Imagine you created a cure for cancer, some ultimate renewable energy, some dirt cheap way to produce solar, whatever it is, whatever it is. Imagine you created some amazing, crazy technology, and you just want to share it around, right? You're not asking people to give you money. You're not asking people to become loyal and fully invest in you. No, you just want it out in the world and people just to look at it. That's it. Just the chance to talk about it. Holy shit, is that difficult? Wow, is that difficult? As all of you see with my work. And my question is, if that is happening to me, how many other people is that happening to? I'm working my ass off. Not everyone has the opportunity, the expertise, even though you see all this that I have, technically speaking, I've been working for almost a decade to get to this point, right? I had to live in a storage unit in order to get the money to buy this property. That was almost a decade ago, right? I had to work my ass off every bit of the way, step by step to eventually get here. But most people don't have that opportunity. But there's so many people with that the ingenuity and inventions and technologies and ideas that they have to make the world a better place. And these content creators can give them that platform. They're willing to help. They're willing to provide you that knowledge, provide you that information, provide you step-by-step easy recipes, provide you money to do it. And these YouTubers won't even give them the chance. I don't know. For me, that's a really hard sin because, again, how many other technologies, how many cures for cancers do we have that is out there and sitting and hurting people that, let me read some more comments. Can you show where metals collect on your electrolysis on a negative electrode? I mean, that's not sure where I can show you, but in the cone tank. I have plenty of YouTube shorts. You can see that. I've seen other YouTubers asking YouTubers for collabs and they respond, yeah, I agree. And that's a problem. That's my whole problem to address. Like, we shouldn't normalize this as society. That's like, I understand I might seem like, some might call me bitchy, right? Some might call me, problematic by acting like this. I've even heard, that one video I did with Mount Baker Mining, and people said, oh, this type of video is going to cause other YouTubers not work with you. And I fully get that. But I feel like it's such an important thing that someone has to speak out about it, because otherwise everyone's scared to talk about it because they're worried about them not being able to collab with other YouTubers, that everyone just stays silent about this. We shouldn't be like, no, there needs to be a shift in society about this. I'm already in talks with a couple YouTubers about, changing their ways. Like, hey man, why not provide a consultation service? Why not this? So someone wants to talk to you, like, with me or whatever, they can. They're like, oh shit, you're right. So there's definitely, I'm not saying everyone's terrible, but like, definitely, I mean, probably like 97% of emails and YouTubers I've reached out to just has been completely ignored. I'm pretty sure you're going, yep. The open source thing with William, I'm definitely really open source. I'm really excited about that. I definitely agree. Probably speaking in person, not probably, but 100% speaking in person is going to help a lot. Right. But again, like, if you have the cure for cancer, if you have, something that can completely save the environment or whatever, save lives, like, it shouldn't be this thing where like you have to wait a whole year to get to a meetup event. And right, like there needs to be better ways. There needs to be a better system in humanity for technology to be able to get out. I was chatting with AI Bob about making some membranes, and we came up with a plan to make bilayer membranes with I'm assuming you mean cation and anionic resin. See a nylon mesh doped with ferrochloride. I'm not sure what you mean by nylon, how you're going to dope nylon with ferrochloride. If you can, drop in my Discord server. I'd love to talk about that. I'll try to get a link because people always ask about that. So let me get that link. But yeah, as for making the bipolar membranes, yeah, 100% you could easily do that with the recipe. You make a cation and then you spray anion on it, whatever, or vice versa. I'm really close to getting finished with the anion membrane recipe. So I'm really excited to get that out soon. It's working so great. It's just working so great. Hey mate, keep up the good work and keep going. I'm working on getting some thunderstorm generate tech out as well. It's the same board. Yeah, it's, you know, what I like about thunderstorm. I've kind of you know, stepped a foot in there, and you know, they have a really nice community. They have a lot of great people. They have a lot of people that just, you know, all working together, huge group. So, you know, definitely is interesting. You know, that but again, there needs to be a better way, right? Like you can't just have to start up a whole community from the bottom up. Like that's just unrealistic. Every single person has, like, that is years and decades of dedication, and you know, most people just physically can't do it. I've heard about the story who came up with AM radio, or the guy who first found how to make ice. Oh, the first, yeah, I heard about this story about the guy who make ice. Yeah, yeah. You know, I definitely get it, but those, you know, that doesn't mean that should be a norm, right? Again, those were those times, and I really feel as a society, especially with the internet, we could do so much better. Again, like, you know, back then they didn't have the internet, they didn't have communication, they didn't have, you know, like to try get something from one side to the other side of the country, you know, so difficult. You know, nowadays we, like, there should be no reason that it's so difficult to get a technology out. There should be no reason. I'm gonna go back to their chat so they don't think that I'm you. Actually, don't. Anything like proton exchange membranes or just for desalination? What do you mean? It's, you had a message retracted. Why does it say message retracted? Is it deleting your guys' messages or something? Because I don't have any bots, or I don't have any moderators that are doing anything. So I don't know if you guys are deleting anything or. But yeah, I do want to make proton exchange membranes. Like I'm sort of to synthesize hydrochloric acid, sodium hydroxide. I'm planning on doing that soon, so I can try and make everything from scratch. You saw Lauren. This is so cool. Thanks. You're welcome. Yeah, for hydrochloric acid, I mean, you could just do direct electrolysis with a cation membrane. The problem is you're going to produce a lot of chlorine gas, so you'll have to then collect the hydrogen and chlorine gas produced by the positive and negative electrode, run that through a UV lamp, and then bubble that through water. And the UV lamp will pretty much react to hydrogen chloride to produce hydrochloric acid, and they'll regenerate your hydrochloric acid separately. Though I'm also again with this anion membrane. What's really cool, and I had a Discord on my he started off as a viewer on a stream, and then he posted on my Discord server. But it's a way to actually produce hydrochloric acid in situ, completely at this, like no UV lamps needed. You just need an extra membrane sort of thing in sulfuric acid, and the sulfuric acid electrolysis acts as the hydrogen donor. OpenSAT is going to be great. Yeah, I'm really excited to go there. So if anyone's planning to go there, definitely go. I forgot, what did you say about stability in elemental bromine? What do you mean by that? Stability of what? I'm assuming you mean bromide leaching instead of hydrochloric or chlorine leaching. Yeah, bromide leaching is definitely a lot better because it, you know, it doesn't off gas, and the radicals stay in solution a lot better and a lot longer. So there's definitely a couple of benefits to bromide instead of chlorine, but I still prefer to stick to chloride because it's a lot, you can't really say safer, but it's a lot more, I'd say, natural and easy to access. You just need salt water, right? You don't need some sort of you know, exotic bromide source, right? It's not like you can just go to the ocean and, you know, get a shitload of bromide as you can with chlorine. Yeah, I don't like the thunderstorm generators. They talk like scammers. I do agree on that. That is the biggest problem I'd say about like the whole plasma community, is there's like a huge attraction for sociopaths, and a lot of them are, you know, scammers. A lot of them like to scam. They see it as a very easy thing to scam people with. I 100% agree on that. That is the one thing I don't like about them, but a lot of them are also good people. You know, there's scammers everywhere, right? There's There's scammers in mainstream academia. So yeah, there's a lot of scammers in mainstream academia, right? It's a huge problem right now in universities and scientific papers and literature. But it's just weird thing where we've normalized that. That's okay, but just one or two, a couple people in plasma, scamming or talking about nonsense. It's sad. I removed a couple of messages, try and make it more coherent. Would these membranes be helpful in extracting silver off silverware? I have a ton that's worthless to me. Okay, so here's the question. When you say a ton, do you actually mean a physical ton or do you mean a couple 100 pounds? So, silverware, I would just do traditional processing. What's his name? Street Tips has a really good video on how to do it. You just electrowin off silver because it's already as a large silver content product. So yeah, I wouldn't bother my time. I wouldn't use this technology for that. It's a lot easier to set up a small electrowinning cell and just run some silver plates off that versus trying to set up a whole chlorine leaching cell, and all it is really going to just electroplate it off as a mix. It just doesn't make too much sense to use this technology for that case scenario. And again, the most important thing, if you're doing any of this, if you're going to get into any sort of refining, okay, sit down and always calculate how much material do you have and what is it worth, right? Again, if you have 100 pounds of, so which is a lot, that's a lot. But if you have 100 pounds of silver plates, let's do a calculation. Silver plates percentage silver, right? So silver plates are, oh wow, well, it depends which plates, right? Are they silver plated? If it's silver plated, it's only 1 to 2%, which is only 1 to 2 pounds. There's other ones that are only, as an alloy, they're only 7.5%, right? So that's, there's of course pure silver plates, which is, 99. But if you have that point, like, just sell it to someone. Why buy the chemicals, get the lab space, get the fume hood, get the safety equipment, all that, and risk your health for what profits? There's refiners out there that are experts at gold and silver that will do it very quickly, very cheaply, and sure, obviously they get a cut, right? Everyone does, but they do it at sort of scale where they have the expertise, where it's they make money off that. I really don't think gold and silver refining is something at small scale you should do yourself. It's just sell it. It's a lot better to do that. Back to the membranes. What is the anion membrane good for? What is it? Oh, anion. So whenever I say so anion, not just anion. So anions move anions, cations move cations. So obviously what the hell that means. It depends on whether or not the molecule is positively or negatively charged. But this is getting into a bit of deeper chemistry, but as a rough sort of rough rule of thumb, anions are, for example, let's say you have sodium chloride, right? Chlorine is the anion, sodium is the cation. If you have gold chloride, again, right? Gold is the cation, chlorine is the anion. If you have lead nitrates, so lead is the cation, nitrogen is nitrate, nitrogen is the anion, right? So on and so forth. So I hope that kind of makes a better understanding. But what the hell does it mean? Why does that help? Well, there's a lot of cases, really unique case scenarios where you can actually utilize those membranes in specific scenarios to have a certain effect. So, for example, if you are running an electrowinning cell, okay, you're running an electrowinning cell, eventually you're going to have a problem where you're going to have, so how electrowinning cell works, you have this, let's say, metal that is, let's say this Dory bar that's, for example, 90% gold, right? 90% gold, 10% contaminants. And you just have it in some solution, and you have the negative electrode, you use the gold bar, the Dory bar as the positive electrode, and you just slowly plate off the gold, and you'll end up with very pure gold. And then the positive electrode that was the 90% Dory bar, that's gonna plate off the gold. A lot of the contaminants are gonna fall off, but some contaminants do end up in the solution a little bit over time. And eventually you're gonna have to completely clean out the solution. So what do? You can have a cation exchange membrane, and I'll selectively separate cations that build up in the solution. Another thing you could do, so let's say that solution runs. Eventually, some of the nitrogen, let's say you use nitrogen to, or nitric acid to, for whatever process, right? And you need to, for silver, if I'm correct, they use nitric acid for silver. In electrowinning. So eventually you need to replace your nitric acid, right? That's expensive. That costs money. Well, what you can do is actually have an anion membrane in that, and have the positive, have the electrowinning solution move through the positive side, right? Just have some graphite electrodes in the electrowinning solution pass through that, and on the negative side, just have stainless steel electrode or whatever, and you could use sodium nitrate, ammonium nitrate, fertilizer, and regenerate your nitric acid. That's a cool way that you can use cation or anion membranes in very selective applications. Earlier, I was talking about generating your own hydrochloric, and sodium hydroxide in situ, right? So, if I'm correct, correct how they have it is, let me see the diagram. See the diagram really quick. Anyways, this is going to take a while. I don't want to take your guys so much time. But anyways, point is, they have this set up, and you have a cation membrane on the positive side. Okay, on the positive side of electron. So positive. Let me get a damn diagram. Let me just draw it. What am I doing, guys? What am I doing? I have a whiteboard. Why am I being stupid about this? This is some cool chemistry you can do just by having some anion or cations. Okay, so here's an example, right? So we have our electrolysis cell, right? Normally we have our electrolysis cell. We will have our negative electrode here, right? Negative electrode is blue, obviously. If you can see that, where are all my markers? That's no good. I need my markers. Oh, they're over there. Found them. Okay, so we have our positive electrode here, right? And usually, let's say yellow's gonna be anion and brown's gonna be cation, right? So let's say we have our anion membrane right here, and right here we have and then we're gonna have a cation membrane. Okay, so what are you able to see? Kind of, not really. That was a terrible color. Let me not use yellow. Actually, that was a terrible color. How about this? Cyan? Oh, looks like green. Whatever. Okay, so positive, negative, cation, anion. You'll have your salt water right here. Okay, your salt water solution right here. What will end up happening is the cation, so sodium, moves over to the negative electrode. Okay, you form sodium hydroxide. Cool, right? The green, okay, that's the anion. That will allow chlorine ions to pass through, and this will become it'll actually generate chlorine gas. Very little bit might produce some sort of hydrochloric acid, but almost all. Actually, no. Sorry, no. With anion, yeah, I've already done this test. It just produces chlorine gas, right? It'll produce pure chlorine gas on this side. Obviously, that's you have to recapture it, do all the headache, blah 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 blah. Well, what if you put another cation exchange membrane? Okay, you put a cation exchange membrane. You'll put here some sulfuric acid, and it just acts as a conductor. Okay, but its point is you put some sulfuric acid here. Well, what will end up happening is the chlorine ions will pass through the membrane, but they can't go past the cation membrane, right? Because it only allows cations to pass through. So it'll prevent the chlorine from passing through, but the sulfuric acid will actually then move hydrogen ions through, and this will then form hydrochloric acid instead of any sort of chlorine gas. So this is a way to actually produce pure hydrochloric acid out, pure sodium hydroxide out, and brine as the input. Simple, super simple, right? It's that's an example of how you can use cations or anions in specific applications, and that's a really cool one, right? So that's actually my favorite one to do. Let me keep reading. So I've shown you the scrubber design in our local science adjacent chat, and it was accepted well. I really appreciate that. Yeah. So hopefully I can release that product soon as one of many. Thunderstorm generator is a con job. Somewhat, yeah, but at least they have, enthusiasm to try something and actually push something. There's a lot of people call, not a lot of people, a couple people will call Nature Job, the guy who makes gasoline from plastic, a con job. Like, I think that's really ridiculous to say, especially him, especially in his case. Do I disagree with the microwave pyrolysis method? Yes. I even had that, little debate with him where, I showed how induction pyrolysis was way superior, way better. But the thing that I do not care what any critic, what any hater, even myself, what about him, you cannot judge him for a single moment because he's actually out there trying something. He's actually out there building those things, getting himself burnt and blown up, right? Putting his life on the line to try, at least see. Even if he fails, even if it's not optimal, whatever will happen, happens. But at least he did it. Most people can't write. So many people are keyboard warriors. They love arguing and complaining and, oh, this guy's a scammer, and this is not the best way to do that, and that's not the best way to do that. Do it yourself. That's why I don't really again, do I have my criticisms about him? 100%, but I don't call him a scammer. I don't call him, this, at least he's doing it. That's what I respect him so much. Especially in his case, he's 100% not a scammer. I definitely understand what you mean by, thunderstorm generators, but yeah. I'll go brought me here. Can your tech be applied to make fuel cells? Yes. Yeah, that can. Off natural gas. Yep. Those they already exist. You just have to. I already looked into that. I already wanted. I kind of looked, not wanted, because obviously I have a bunch of stuff I need to do first. But I already looked into the practicality of that, and yeah, it's pretty easy to do. There's just one catalyst that needs to be optimized, which is at least this was for a methanol fuel cell, so it needs a iron, nitrogen, carbon catalyst thing, and it's not too hard to do. There's a couple processes as usual, as always. It takes some, like I just said, right? It takes someone to actually sit down, build themselves a laboratory, build themselves a place, and try to test and do it and experiment with it and figure it out to do it. And, eventually I do want to do it, but if one of you guys want to do it, please make a YouTube video on producing some of these catalysts. Let's do a collaboration. Let's work together. And, I make my membranes. I already have the, here, let me show you. I already have the cell designs for the fuel cells. A huge stack of here. This is not the whole stack, but I have like 100 cells already cut out, already done, and the way they work is quite simple. So this one's cut out. So as you see, you'll have one side solution pass through, the other side solution pass through. You have the membrane on this side, electron on this side, and it'll pass through this chamber in between electrode and membrane and go through here. And then on the other side, right, if you see, it's reversed. So it's the other way around. So this side will then pass through and go through. So I already have them cut out. If you're in Florida and want to help me assemble these, please. I'm near Lakeland, Florida, Lake Wales, Lakeland. We can collaborate. We can work together. We can, I just don't have the time to do that. I need to finish. I'm gonna finish this order today. I already got one finalized. I just have one more today, and then this week I have 2 more orders I need to finish. I need to do that. I need to do that video where I process rock to metal, and then I can kind of relax and then not really relax because there's always a lot of stuff. I have to do. I have to process a bunch of feedstock, but let's take a break because I've had a lot on my plate. Anyways, hey man, looking forward to your upcoming start to finish process video. I'm wondering how much chloride do you lose in a typical leaching process? I mean, really hard to say because it definitely, obviously depends on your size batch. But I wouldn't say, I mean, I don't know. I never measured it, but it's not a lot. It's definitely not a lot. The I mean, technically speaking, if you fully capture your chlorine, right, and I will no, in that video I'll just do a scrubber just for demonstration purposes. But if you do a UV, so you vacuum, so you pull that gases, the hydro, because it'll be generating a little bit of hydrogen and a little bit of chlorine gas. You just pull that through a, sorry, my mind's a little blank. You pull that through a UV lamp, pretty much as a UV lamp or a UV catalyst, and it'll turn it back to hydrochloric acid. So technically speaking, you won't lose any of your chlorine. And for the UV lamp, it's just acts as a catalyst. It doesn't need to be. It's not. It's actually that process. Technically speaking, you run that through one of my electrolysis cells that I just showed you. One of those fuel cells and actually generate electricity. So, anyways, if you use UV, it just acts as a catalyst. It's not that it consumes energy or anything. Very minimal, just to keep the lamp on, right? Hello from Tennessee. Can your tech be used to desalinate seawater? Yes, it can. What about wastewater? Drop a there is so there's what's called biocell. I think biological fuel cells or something. That's a whole thing on its own. I haven't really looked into it, but you can actually generate electricity from that. How hard would a 100 kilowatt fuel cell be to build, and how small could you build it? Well, so the ones I just showed you, right? That frame, that. So it's really hard to say because it heavily depends on which solution you use, which catalyst you use, which whatever you use. There's like, for example, you use platinum group catalysts, they reduce your size by 100-fold. Obviously, that's huge. It's a huge, huge difference. There's if you use magnesium oxide catalyst, that's the simplest, cheapest, and easiest one, but they have very low amperage per square centimeter, right? Obviously, that's a problem. So yeah, heavily depends. It's a hard question to say. The one I just showed you, that was designed for a ferric chloride cell, ferric chloride flow battery, and that each one was 20 amps, and they're 1 point something volts. So let's say you have 48 of them, right, to make yourself a 48-volt battery, and that'll be at 20 amps. That ends up being about 1 kilowatt. I think it was something around 1 kilowatt. So 1 kilowatt at, that's, let's say 48 of them stacked up, this size at 1 kilowatt. Obviously that seems a little, but here's the cool thing. And here's my applications where I wanted to use that, is actually combine that with a lithium battery. So you'll have, maybe 1 or 2 of those cells, because an average home uses about 1 kilowatt on average of electricity. So you don't have to have a fuel cell or a redox flow battery cell that fully powers that house, at, let's say, 100% peak power. No. You just have a fuel cell or flow battery that is able to supplement that power on average over a long time. And then you'll have a lithium battery that, does the fluctuations, right? It'll take in the solar charge, and then slowly charge the fuel cell, and then the fuel cell slowly, you get the point, right? The whole point is, you just use a lithium ion battery in conjunction with a fuel cell in order to kind of balance the load. But you also can just realistically, again, a small box like this for 1 kilowatt, like, that's pretty good power, right? If you just, turn into a huge ass ICB tub, right? A huge ass ICB tub, boom, you have yourself, there. How many kilowatts? I don't know, but you might have almost 100 kilowatts through a flow battery, which is lower power than a fuel cell. A fuel cell is a lot more higher powered than a ferrochloride cell. Hi mate, I have concentrated with flour, gold, blah, 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 blah. What's process for select extract again? Not yet. I don't have a video about that. It's a bit more difficult than it sounds. Yeah, but I don't have a video about that yet. I would just recommend doing the traditional route, but you need an analytical equipment to do it this right, because platinum group metals, this is not something they just easily separate. Can carbon fiber be used for electrodes? If they're conductive, they can. I've never tried, so I don't know. If they're conductive, yeah, 100%. Infinitely better than tech ingredients. I appreciate that, Savage. This stream is nice too. I mean, I like them. I think it would do really great nerding out. It just sucks that, you know, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And in their case, they won't even look at the water. They won't even look at the water because they're like, why does this guy really want me to look at this water? It's very suspicious. He must. There's absolutely no one in the world who would open source technology and, you know, be good. Absolutely nobody, because clearly I'm a bad person, and if I'm a bad person, everyone else must be a bad person, and everyone else must have the same mentality as I do, and I know that if I had that technology, if I had something that big, I wouldn't just give it away to the world. No. I would. Where the hell is my broom? Let me find my broom, guys. Hold on. Fucking serious. Where is my broom? I'll be back. If you guys have any questions, if you couldn't even hear me, just feel free to drop it in the comments. I'll get back and read them. I have found my broom. We have made progress. I brought a friend in here and he kept complaining how dusty it is and dirty. And he's right. Is my mic even working? Yes, it is. It's green. That means it's working. All right. So it looked like we got new questions. Someone don't lick this also. Man, it smells really good. But anyways, suspicious water, that's gold. Thanks. Do you still have pigs? I like your video on experimenting with sugar/feed from wood. Yes, I do have the pig still. Sorta. I mean, I need to make an updated video, but I was actually the top producer of Berkshire pigs in the state of Florida. I've won that award for 2 years in a row now, actually. So I used to do it a lot and did pretty good with it, but I kind of stopped and now I only have 5 pigs left. They're just sows. I don't even have my boar yet. I just have them around because I need to take them to the butcher and turn them into meat. But anyways, point is, yeah, I have them, but I don't really deal with them, you know, sadly. I realize I need to dedicate all my time and energy and focus on this technology because it's so important. So that's what I did this past year and a half. Well, I got back into some other agricultural stuff to supplement, to be able to have a daily income again, be able to go out and buy groceries and not stress out, and be able to go out and, you know, travel and stuff. I was finally able to buy a very reliable car, which was very nice. Yeah, recapturing chlorine gas is definitely the way to go. Have you personally ever run that process using UV to make HCl from the gases. Apparently, it's very exothermic, even explosive. Yes, you're right. Correct. You have to be very, very, very careful about that. Which is why it's very important to. Definitely, you're right. That is it's not something to play around with. Definitely something you got to be careful with. UV catalyst and spraying something in that chamber to be able to capture, and once it forms, it reacts. Yeah, no, you're right. You got to be careful. Need to use Semtech to make methanol from air and CO2. Yep, that'd be really. I always want to get into that. I always want to. I'm like, man, I would love to have a methanol fuel cell, that I could just like use for various things. I really, really want that. There's a lot of times I'm like, man, it'd be really nice if I could just like, have this dirt cheap way of producing electricity from a fuel source and just transporting it. Instead of using battery stuff. But hey, one thing at a time, So eventually, don't. Maybe closer than we'll think, but probably that won't happen until after open source, because right now my priority is the video and processing, processing various feedstocks, and we just placed I just check the GoFundMe. I'll post GoFundMe in the chat, but we just passed, or I just placed we're at 94% of. Actually, we have the full funds for the vacuum filtration drum. So, huge thanks on that, and huge thanks on this one specific donor that's helped a huge ton on that. It was a large contributor on that, but yeah, I've just placed a 50% deposit for the vacuum filtration drum. About a month, when they're about to ship out, I'll be able to then pay the remaining 50%. But from pretty much this week or today or whatever, this weekend, it's a 2-month process. Approximately 2 months, I'll have the continuous vacuum filtration drum. So that's another thing I have to get ready for and prepare, so that once it's here, I can start, I can just hook up my electrolysis cells and start experimenting, right? How it goes, what'll happen. I have no clue, but hey, that's a huge, huge thing, right? Like that's so huge for this technology, because that's just been a really, really setback thing. Beyond this, the next thing I'm looking to fund is to purchase. I'm still debating. I probably am going to end up going with an ICP OES, or maybe even both, right? And it'd be nice just to get both. But anyways, one of these ICP analytical equipment. And the reason why is, well, I had a couple people reach out to me that have experience in building these and fixing them up. They're like, hey, this equipment is a lot easier and simpler than than you might think to fix up, and it's really easy to access and get the software needed for it. That was my biggest thing, like this wavelength dispersive XRF I got, right? This huge monstrosity. When I bought it, from the I bought it used, right? But when I was trying to get the software from the company, like that was a really, really hard thing to get, and it took, even when I paid for it, it took almost a whole year until I actually got my correct license key. They shipped me out a donor, a temporary one, after like half a year. But right, again, that's a lot of companies. They're just not very friendly to fixing your own equipment. So, but what I heard, and I had a lot of really, really good people recommend me, is to go with Thermo Fisher. Apparently, Thermo Fisher is super, a lot friendlier. People say like, hey, I buy used equipment, just call up, ask Thermo Fisher, and they just send me upgraded software, for free for the machine. Like that's so amazing to hear. So that by itself makes me want to stay, go with Thermo Fisher. And I even got quotes for their new analytical equipment, and it's way cheaper than everything else. So yeah, I don't know. I'm just super happy with Thermo Fisher, even though I've yet to use their products. Definitely a lot happier with their service. I've actually had a representative come and visit my laboratory, so he already saw my work, and he's super supportive. So I already have connections with them. So yeah, 100%. I'm really, really excited to go with a Thermo Fisher product, and go from there. But anyways, the reason I was getting into all this is the reason why beyond all that, the primary reason why uh, before I thought that if I wanted to get an ICP or some one of that, I'd have to put down $250,000, right? And the reason why is because of my XRF experience. With my XRF experience was a very bad experience. I already had connections with a couple of mines that had used XRF, handheld XRF, and they had lots of problems with that. Then we bought a Chinese desktop XRF, and that ended up being a complete scam. I ended up losing $18,000 on that. Yeah, very huge disappointments. So because of those learning lessons and also this XRF I'm working with right now, what I realize is the XRF market is really weird. So the problem with the XRF market is everyone wants an XRF. So if you like, before I bought this Rigaku NEXDE, I was trying to find refurbished or used XRF equipment. They were going for like $30,000 for an equipment that didn't have the computer, didn't have the license, that was 20 years old, didn't have any calibration sets, nothing. $30,000. Keep in mind, this thing, technically speaking, it's like $62,000, but with computer and this and this and this and this, ends up going up to 67. So like $30,000 for something that doesn't really work. If you want to buy something that's like tested, working, 100% condition, running, it'll be closer to like $40,000 or $50,000. Again, why would I spend that much money on something that's 20 years old when I could just spend a little bit more and get something that's brand new, on warranty, upgraded model, newer model? Like, it makes no sense to buy used XRF. The demand for them is just ridiculously stupid because every single miner wants an XRF. Every single mine wants an XRF, right? And because of that, it's resulted in this weird thing where all used XRF hold their value very, very well for a very long time. And I mistakenly thought that was the same for all analytical equipment. But I realized what ICP is, that's not the case, actually. Miners, they don't know what the hell an ICP is. They don't know what the difference between an ICP MS or ICP OES is, right? They have no clue. They have absolutely no clue. And you need a bit of chemistry background. You need a bit of, knowledge to know how to operate these things. You need a facility space. You need, it's not something that you just put a rock in and analyze. No, you need to have a bit of knowledge to operate one. And because of that, the market on them is completely different. There's refurbished working ICP-MS units for $30,000. And again, these are $250,000 machine, right? These aren't $70,000. No, they're $250,000 machines. There's non-working ICP-MS machines for $5,000 that you can get the software for, and fingers crossed, right? Get it running, so definitely it's a whole new ball game. And that's why the next, now I got this thing done. The next thing I'm gonna spend my money on, or if we raise any money, please GoFundMe, help us out. But next thing purchases, I need to get some calibration samples, sample holders, and other stuff for this equipment. And then after that, get an ICP. So either MS or OES, I'm not sure, but I already had a couple of people reach out and they're like, hey, I have the connection, I have the experience. This is literally what I do, is fixing up these equipments, and I'm willing to help you. And, and I'm sure, doing live streams like this and, reaching out to people, asking for help, I'd find other people that's, are willing to help. So yeah, I'm super, super excited, super happy, about that this isn't some far-fetched dream that I, is going to take forever to get to. No, this is something that is very realistic, and in a couple of months I can practically get to, because I want to launch that service where people can send a feedstock, whatever. I process that through my self-electro mining unit, send them the samples back, send them the concentrate back for testing, for demonstration purposes, because either a company builds their own unit and gets expertise and facility space and all that for, $10,000, $20,000, or they just pay me $3,000, $5,000 to process it for them. So I realized that's a service that I could provide, and a lot of companies are interested in. So a couple of those, boom, we have ourselves an ICP. And with ICP, I can do a lot of really nice stuff. So yeah, clarify your feedstock first before feeding sludge to the vacuum drum. They're meant to handle high solid high solid slurries. I mean, I can control the slurry whatever I wanted to, right? So, I mean, we'll see. We'll see how it works, I suppose. But I think I can run it at very high. We'll see. Well, I remember us talking about the clarification, but like I said, the problem with clarification is then you add a lot of volumes amount, and I don't want to add a lot of volume amount because that's just gonna make the leaching process and electrolysis process a lot less efficient. Yeah. And what do you mean door technology? Oh, barn doors. He means bar doors. Sorry. Here, I missed this comment. Hey, your barn doors are the same design as my shed door. Did you bolt an EMT to your wall and hang bearings on a sheet of wood too? No. What I did, I got a piece of angle iron and I got a piece of round rod and just welded it at the tip of the angle iron, just a little tack weld. And then I got these roller bearings that were like U shapes. That was for that diameter rod, and then grinded it down so it'd go through, and it works amazing. So, you know, these are really heavy duty, big barn doors. I mean, they're 10-foot wide and like 5-foot wide, each one's. So, you know, they're spray foamed and they're pretty light. They're really easy to open. Yeah, I love them really much, but I'm having a problem with humidity and stuff. And yeah, it's nice right here, but definitely I'm thinking of closing off this, you know, separation. So a cation membrane is made with, and no, a cation membrane. Well, I mean, technically, yeah. Well, it's made with cation resin, which is positively charged, right? That way it allows negative, no, sorry, it's negatively charged, so it allows positive ions to pass through to the negative electrode, right? Because opposites attract, and likes repel. So obviously, if it's, you know, it has positive charge resin in it, then it would prevent positive ions from passing through. So, yeah, I mean, it's I wouldn't say it's made with anions, but it's made with anion exchange, or it's made with cation resin, which is positively charged. So I hope that makes sense. Do you know anyone else building your cells right now? I mean, there's that one guy on Discord that, you know, there's a couple people. I mean, I have a couple people that already ordered cells from me. Not too many, but you know, a couple. So there's a couple. There's already that one guy that already built my cell. He allowed me to. I need to talk to him just to make sure again. But he already allowed. He's like, yeah, please, you know, show the video. And he built a cell very similar to mine. He's already processing material, plating off the concentrates, and it all runs. It all works. So it's so nice seeing, you know, that third-party validation that I'm not the only one. There's other people doing this. So I was really happy about that. Some visitors tomorrow, so I want to try to get this as clean as possible. Do I need to keep it clean always? One of these days I need to focus on finishing up the cabinets and stuff for this lab. I need to put in some uppers and ceiling. I don't have the money for that. I won't have the money for that soon. Or time, but somebody wants to hang ceilings up, that'd be nice. Some tiles, you know, the tiles that they usually have, that way I can run electrical and stuff afterwards pretty easily. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty nice to a laboratory already. I mean, you can see it's a huge mess, but I mean, hey, the walls are really nice. You know, it's nice overall. I'd say it's just needs to get a little prettier. You know, it's definitely a mess, but we're getting there. We're getting there. We are getting there. I started using, so I have the base cabinets, right? And I just recently started actually, like they were empty this whole time and they still like 80% of them are still empty. I kind of am scared to put anything in there because I know if I put something in a base cabinet, you know, a drawer or whatever, I'm gonna forget what the hell is in there. So, just recently, I've started finally using them. You know, I have this one drawer just for one stuff, this other drawer just for other stuff, and you know, I'm now starting to use it and stuff. So yeah. I missed a couple of comments. Tape casting, also called rollover, could be used high throughput of those membranes. Yeah, that is a way, definitely. 100%. Yeah, I mean these membranes, 100%. I see these membranes as being easy to mass produce, right? Easy to be commercialized in production. You know, but again, that requires time and money to build a little setup like that to be able to mass produce those membranes. Something I do want to do. It's not too much money, but again, it's like, okay, here's the dilemma with that. Okay, I start mass production of these membranes. Then what? Right? Then are you willing to buy a 200 meter? I don't know. Maybe if I put it up for sale, people are gonna buy it. Then it's definitely, I don't know. It's interesting to think about. But for now, what I need to do is what I need to do for now is release my spray membrane recipe, or not release, but edit up the video for that. My spray membrane recipe on how I make them paper thin, which is in the patent already, but you know, a step-by-step video. After that, then or both, right? Anyways, then I need to do the anion membrane recipe, step-by-step video on how to do that, which I've just recently been able to optimize again. Then I'll release both of those products, the thin membranes and then the anion membranes, and then we'll see what the demand is, how it goes. You know, if people, you know, whatever, someone wants to buy a, you know, a meter square roll or whatever, right? And they can. So and if that works out, then yeah, I'll look into the scraper blade method. I thought about it. I looked into it already and thought about it, but I'm just like, okay, I do this. I spend my time and effort on this. Then what, right? Like, who's gonna buy this? Like, where am I? Okay, forget about buying it. Where am I gonna put it? I'm already low on space, as you see, and my place is a mess. Where am I gonna put that machine and start mass producing these membranes? You know, it's like, oh, now I have to build another workshop. Oh, damn, that's gonna take even more time and money, right? So, you know, it's like, what do I prioritize on? If only the professors at my schools would take a look at this. If only. If only. If only. On second thought, I think your electrolysis cells are actually basically a clarification step, so you're probably good. Well, electrolysis cells are after the vacuum filtration drum, not before. You have already demonstrated flow batteries, but can the same concept be used to make more efficient running production reactors? Yes, of course they can be. Yeah, I mean, yeah, 100% they can be used to make chloralkali, sulfuric acid, hydrogen peroxide, 100%. Again, it's something I want to do videos on, but I need to patent the electrodes and open source that I promised I'd do a month ago. Yeah, there's a lot of other stuff I need to do instead. Actually, Jay Duncan is right. The cation membrane is made with some kind of polymer, functionalized with sulfonic groups. So yeah, the cation membrane says anion. Yeah, like I said, the cation has the opposite charge to it in order to allow the opposite charge, right? Opposites attract, likes repel. It's just confusing. The reason why I don't like saying that it has anions in it is because then people are going to buy anion resin and try to make a cation membrane out of it, right? That's why it's like, yes, no. I hate the term anion, cation. entirely. Like I hate the words anode and cathode. Yeah, I hate those words, and they're very problematic. You know, for example, if you have an electrolytic cell, the anode and cathode is a positive and negative, right? So cathode is negative, anode is positive. If you turn that into a flow battery, okay, or even in a flow battery, right, as you're charging it, the anode is a positive, the cathode is a negative. If you're discharging it, the positive is the cathode, the negative is the anode. So it flips if you're discharging or charging. Why? Like, no, when I say why, no, I get why. But why use anode or cathode to call the type of electrode? It just, like, I see it with chemists so many times, professional chemists with high backgrounds and stuff. They get confused. They're like, they'll be talking with someone or whatever, and they're like, 20 minutes in a conversation, they're like, really confused with one another. Oh, I forgot that, in a flow cell or whatever, that it flips charge. Or like, it happens. I see it happen all the time. Stop using cation or anion in, so like, for example, the membrane examples, like John, Dokhanov, like, don't say that a cation membrane has anions in it, because people are going to get confused. Some person out there, I wouldn't even call them an idiot, because it's rightfully a very easy mistake to do. They're going to hear you say that. They're going to hear someone say that, and then they're going to go buy anion resin, right? So it's better to say a cation has a positively charged sulfonic groups in it, which allow a cation has negatively charged sulfonic groups in it, which allow positively charged ions to pass through, which then go through negative electrode, which is negatively charged, because opposites attract. That's a much better way to say it than it has anion in it. People are going to get very confused. It was a very long explanation, rant. My Tesla turbine guy said he's going to reach out soon. All right, looking forward to that. Bought a good sack resin and tried to create a membrane with gray meat. Oh my God. Yes, watch the videos. It pisses me so much, Trapper. I'm sorry, but I spent so much time and effort and money, firstly, to get to the point that I did and research I did and create that step-by-step video instruction on exactly how to do it step by step. And instead of just following the video, you go and do something else and then complain why it doesn't work. Just follow the video. Like, what else can I tell you? The brilliant thing about the open source tech is you can safely assume the Chinese are just going to copy your tech anyways. Exactly. You can't. The patents are useless in today's age. There's nothing you can do with patents, because, okay, you have a patent, and how are you going to make sure some company on the other side of the world, inside of their factory, is violating your patent or not? How are you going to enforce that? You can't. And even if they are, who cares? They're in a different damn country, and like 90% of the time, they just don't care. Hell, they sell it on Amazon, and it's a huge ass hassle to try to get it to be enforced. Like, it's ridiculous. We live in a society that advances far faster than a patent should be allowed to stay as a patent. It's what's called Tesla, right? The car company, they open source all their patents. Same exact mentality. It's like, it should be a fight of who can outcompete and who can innovate the fastest, not who can come up with some idea and then sit on it and do nothing. because that's the dream a lot of people who want to file a patent have, right? That, oh, they're gonna file a patent and they're gonna be rich by sitting around and doing nothing for the rest of their life. You know, and a lot of these patents are patent trolls. It's not even people that come up with good ideas. It's just people trolling the system. You know, a lot of these other patents, it's like they're not really right. It's not really beneficial for society. So, yeah, patents are not the way to go. Well, what's the bit you wish someone had told you 2 years ago? What do you mean? What's the bit? Or like, are you just asking in general what I wish someone had told me 2 years ago? Probably open source sooner. I think that's what would have been best, is open source sooner. I just told someone else that also earlier today, like, you know, they have some technologies they're also working on, and I'm like, great, that looks great, but you need to open source it. You know, I've always wanted to open source, but I was just, you know, I'm like, hey, let me get this to a more finalized point. You know, it was always, hey, let me get this to a more fun. Hey, let me, and you know, 1 week turns into a month turns into a year turns into a couple, and the world still goes on. People still die. Companies still pollute the environment. Wars still are fought over minerals. While I could sit on this technology for another 4 or 5 years to slowly try to progress with the bare resources I have, with, you know, almost a solo person stressing and the whole 9 yards, or open source and we do it together as a community. What's the clear outcome to achieve? I think it's pretty obvious. You know, it's a fear mentality, a scarcity mentality of trying to go public, trying to open source. But it's something you just got to get out of, because if you just sit down and realistically think about it, nothing's gonna there's way more pros to cons to going public, and all of the cons are not really cons, right? Like I said already, you know, con of you going public, well, somebody else might copy you. So what? Someone else is either way gonna copy. Either way, you're gonna get copied. You're not gonna stop that. You cannot stop that. Right? Back, like, for example, there's a lot of companies that I know 100% that are copying my technology, doing whatever they're doing with it, making money, so on and so forth. And they're like, haha, this sucker open source his technology. We're going to run off. I've literally had people tell me that directly. They're either way going to do that. Doesn't matter if I keep that as a patent, and doesn't matter if I like, so listen, if you try to copy this, I'm going to, it doesn't matter if I did that. Those companies would still copy me and not pay a single dime to me. Then there's other companies which I have fully open source, step by step, how to do these things. But they're like, listen, I'm not going to waste the time, the resources, the headache, which is a very realistic, this is the realistic thing you need to understand. As a company, you can't do everything yourself. You can't make a pen yourself. You just rather go and buy it from the store. You can't make this chair yourself. You can. There's people that make chairs themselves all day long, every day long, and that's they make chairs. But why spend that time and money and resources when you can just buy a chair and then you can sit on your computer and make something that earns 100 times more than if you spent 5 hours to build a $30 chair? You get, like, are you seeing the picture? So a lot of companies, a lot of mining companies, they'd rather spend a fraction amount that they would if they tried to do it themselves. A fraction amounts into me to provide them with the same services if they had put in the headache and stress and efforts, and actually it would have taken longer because they don't have the electrochemical experience, they don't have all that. So they have to do it completely from scratch, or they could just pay me. Like it make it like that's the realistic sense to have, is like people have this mentality that, oh, everyone's just gonna copy me. Some people are. They're gonna copy you regardless if they are or aren't. And the people who are willing to pay you, how they know you exist and they're willing to pay you. Those are customers you have now instead of waiting a couple of years. Savage, send this to your friend if you can. Let's see, where did I stop off at? I'm gonna build mine, but I need to train myself more on chemistry. Exactly. You need to train yourself on chemistry. It's like, or just pay someone to get it done for you, who has that experience, who has the laboratory space, who has the equipment. I thought the chopped glass fiber and PVC glue remained in the membranes. They do. The only difference is the resin. I'm not sure what this comment is in reference to. What do you mean? You're in a somewhat better position than most IPs that apply to the customer product verticals. Yours is relevant business to business, industrial processing, so you have great success licensing for super cheap. I've open sourced my technology. There's no licensing. What do you mean? There's no licensing. I open sourced it. Paradoxically, selling something for very cheap oftentimes gets more business with less hassle than giving stuff for free. Of course, larger businesses want licensing agreements. Yeah, larger businesses, I definitely noticed that a lot of the moment I say my technology is open source, a lot of larger businesses are like, okay, we lost all of our interest in talking to you. Goodbye. That's a lot of companies are like that. It sucks. Actually, let me keep this chair because I'm gonna have some people come to tomorrow. It sucks, but don't deal with them. Is that really someone you want to deal with? And they like, eventually, yes. But the world is such a big place. You don't need to pander to every single company out there. There's plenty of people out there that's willing to fund you, willing to buy your products, willing to help you without that bureaucratic traditional nonsense that all these companies are used to being. Like, you don't have to play that game. You can later as you grow up and grow bigger as a company, but if you even want to, right? There's so much in the world. It's like, when you come out with a product that's so game changing that all the competition is using it, like these big companies, they have no choice at that point but to use you. And if they don't, they'll go bankrupt. Why try to pamper to someone like that that's going to go bankrupt? Why do you care about that? Like, help support the smaller operators, help support smaller companies that are willing to be flexible with you and rise up to the top. I agree that you're doing things strategically correct for where you know. Just keep in mind there's gear changes that happens at scale. Have you found that at some point in the leaching process, the solution becomes so contaminated with sodium, potassium, calcium that you have to change out the entire solution? Can it be cleaned? Very great example. Very great question, Leon. So I've yet to find that because I've done batch-wise and not too many batch-wise, but that 100% is a concern. And my solution to that is simply using a cation exchange membrane in parallel, right? So not having the flow cell go through the negative side, just having it pass through the positive side, and being able to pass through those sodium, potassium, calcium ions through and separate them. So that's my solution to that. I was referencing the construction methods of membranes. I watched you on Nighthawk and Light. Great stuff on the side note. Do you own a 3D printer? Are you interested in having one? I do have a 3D printer, but I definitely need a better one. I know a lot of people give them trash for, but Bamboo Labs, they're one thing I really like, and I'm probably gonna buy soon because I really need a decent 3D printer. I have this old thing that I built I don't know, I'd say like 6 or 8 years ago, from Melamine. It has a CNC machine that from cabinet materials. I'll make a video about it one day, but yeah, I'm interested in the Bambu one though that has multi-material inputs and the whole stuff, because there's a lot of multi-material stuff I'd like to print. And you know, you can watch an older video I have where I built a 4-foot by 4-foot 3D printer. You know, eventually I want to rebuild that again, but I'm kind of at this point where like I'm tired of trying to fix up and work on and the whole headache of that. I'd rather just, you know, buy something that works. And they're really cheap. They're like 800, I think they're like $600 or $800 for multi-filament printing. Like you can't DIY it at that price. Like it just cost it. It's more expensive to try to DIY it. Another question. The price of your membranes makes scaling area massively feasible. Would reduce duty and fouling maybe. Yeah, these membranes definitely are pretty resistant to fouling. It's because the resin is, you know, coated in that PVC, and because of that, the resin isn't directly exposed to the chemicals as most other membranes normally are, right? So definitely that makes a huge difference. And I've ran these for almost a year in some of the harshest mining conditions, you know, considered for ion exchange membranes. They still work. I've had a couple other people also mention that they're like, I've already ran this for a long time and there's absolutely no signs of them, you know, losing performance. So not only are they better than the competition, but they're also cheaper. Isn't that like the best win-win? Easier to make. Easy. It's like, you know, the scale. Like, oh, you can't make. I always find that if anyone ever tells you you always have to compromise between speed, cost, or quality, bullshit. BS. That's an engineer compensating for his lack of engineering skills. One of my favorite quotes about being an engineer is that anybody can build a bridge. A baby can build a bridge that can cross the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, so if you want to build a bridge across the Atlantic Ocean, I bet you anybody in the world can do it, no problem, with infinite time and money. Only an engineer can build a bridge across a small canal on a budget and on schedule. That's the fourth tier to that, you know, that triangle, right, where you have the triangle right like this, right? You have the triangle that is time, cost, and then quality. The fourth tier, so if we go up a layer, that is engineering, and that is just pure skill. It's a skill thing. Get good, scrub. You know, that a lot of people just lack. And why some really good engineers get paid a lot of money, because that is something that is worth any amount of time, any amount of quality, that is worth all of that together. Because if you can build something that's quality, quick, and cheap, there's you know, that's something that traverses the 2D plane diagram. No enders, no Anycubes. I haven't tried Bambu, but those two other are freaking nightmares sometimes. Yeah, Bambu Labs I really like for how simple they are. I don't like, obviously, their whole situation with them wanting it to all be online, blah, 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 blah. But I looked into that, and you can still use them offline. You know, it's not that big of a headache. And I'm not saying to be fully dependent on them. Again, I'm still going to keep my old 3D printer if I want to, you know, say they proprietary lock me down or something. Yeah, I'm still going to keep my old 3D printer. You know, I still have software, old software for 3D modeling stuff and slicing software that I always keep, you know, as a backup just in case, right? Who knows what's going to happen in X amount of years. But in the meantime, I'm going to use a Bambu Labs 3D printer and not go through the headache of all that. When I'm pushed to a point where I have to, I will. You know, it's like Windows. I absolutely despise Windows 11, but I'm running Windows on this PC right now. Why? Because the software for this XRF requires it. I have to use it. You know, I use Windows on my main PC. Why? Because all I use it for is for browsing and watching movies, and not much really. I haven't played video games in so long. But yeah, that's also, for playing video games. Um, Again, I haven't really played any, but if I do decide to one day, uh, Windows is a lot easier to play video games on, right? Linux, there's so many difficulties with that. But then on my CNC machine, I run Linux CNC. So it's not that like I'm completely locked into Windows. No, I can use Linux if I have to, but I prefer to use Windows in places where I just don't care. Right? When I'm gonna run my own server, yeah, I'm gonna have Linux. I'm sure as hell not gonna run a Windows server. But again, like that's something I care about. That's something that's important. A computer or a spare 3D printer. That's just something I really don't care about, but something I just need to do something really quick, and I don't have to worry about bed leveling and filaments getting stuck and the whole 9 yards. Just plug and play. Are you part of any maker space or involved with the RipRack project? No, sadly, I am not. I'm not involved with any of that. I tried reaching out to the creator, Adrian Bauer, regarding, he's the guy that started the whole RipRack movement, but he wasn't quite interested in talking to me, sadly, like a lot of people are. But I wish him the best. Adrian Bauer definitely is someone I look up to. He is a role model. Even though, yeah. It reminds me a lot of times of, there's this interview with Elon Musk. I forgot who it was. One of the guys that went to the moon. This was years ago before, when SpaceX just started. This was years ago when SpaceX got so much hate, so much heat. And they asked the astronaut, "Oh, what do you think about SpaceX?" And he talked so much bad. He's like, "Oh, I think private companies should never, get involved with space exploration." Blah 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 blah. Just super negative on SpaceX. And later, a different reporter asked Elon, "Hey, what do you think about that?" And it was such an emotional moment. You could see, Elon Musk just full of tears, and he's like, "This is my role model. This is the guy I look up to. This is the guy I care about. This is the guy," and he's telling me to screw off with my whole company. And look where Elon Musk is now with SpaceX. Literally the only guy that can get to space, launches more stuff into space than the whole rest of the world combined. There's something that's such a huge problem of those type of people that give people who actually do good to the world shit. I really think that's like a really, really huge problem in humanity that we need to address. The best comparison I can give is, imagine we're all, and we are, right? We're on one big planet, but imagine we're all on a boat. We're all on a boat, and there's this guy that's going around poking holes in the ship, and you have a guy going after him fixing those holes. But the guy poking holes, he's like, "Hey, look at that guy. He's doing something with those holes and causing leaks in the ship." Normally, if we were on that ship, we'd immediately grab that guy and throw him out, right? The one poking holes, because like, what the hell's wrong with you? What are you doing? But today, as a society, we're allowing these people to run around and poke holes and exist. Like, they're called sociopaths, and 10% of the population are sociopaths. And we let them run around. Some are very stupid. The low IQ sociopaths are very easy to detect, very easy to find. The higher IQ sociopaths realized, hey, if I pretend or just tolerate or whatever, if I don't expose myself immediately to the society around me, well, what I can end up doing is, in the long term, right, build up myself to a position where then I can do chaos and problems and issues of society at a large scale, right? I don't need to explain who they are. I'm sure you can, many yourself, but I definitely understand. Obviously, I'm not saying any large scale or anything, but again, why are we letting these people around? Why are we letting a guy poke ships on or poke holes in our ship? We all are on this boat. How long are we going to let that happen for? What can we do? What can we do in an optimal society to identify them and what should be done? That's what I always think about. What can be done? Because it's not as simple as you might think. You might think, oh, let's say we're, throw them all off the ship. Well, then one of these sociopaths, or then let's say after a long time in the future, after multiple generations, we start to forget why sociopaths are bad. Right? We have a very, very. I don't know if you guys ever watched a movie, but there's a movie of the man that invented the lie. Right? It's a movie, as it sounds, it's this world where nobody lies. Everyone always says the truth, and this one guy came up with a lie. He's the first guy to come up with lying, and he just walks over everyone pretty much like they're nothing. And he's not really a bad guy. He's not really doing this, just for the. He does it for his benefit, for his personal interest. The problem is, if we eliminate all the sociopaths, and eventually we get to a social point where we all forget what a sociopath is, and a sociopath arises and manage to get through the filter, or let's say we've self-voluntarily, we're like, why are we, putting all these sociopaths, separate from the rest of society on this random island or whatever, right? Whatever solution we came up with. Like, hey, we should bring these sociopaths into our society and integrate them and have them kumbaya with us. Doesn't that, like, we literally are doing, right? There's people that are doing it right now, and some are saying it for a very valid reason. Yeah, anyways, you see where I'm getting at. What happens then? Then the sociopath is going to be the guy that invented lying, and he's going to have complete rule. Okay, am I back now? Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me? I swear, right? That was, I was cleaning that up right there, and I had my that extension cord running that was connecting to my Wi-Fi repeater, which obviously I disconnected, so that happened. So, sorry about that. What's the next question? What is your profession or professional expertise? I used to be a draftsman. That's my professional expertise, a self-taught draftsman. To do field engineering and stuff for high-rise structures. Yeah, that's it. That's all I have. Completely self-taught. I wanted to be a genetic engineer, and one day I'll get back into that. But yeah, that was originally what I wanted to go to college for. But I realized there's way more money running a plumbing company than trying to work for Monsanto and destroy your life and career doing bureaucratic paperwork instead of actually creating cool stuff for society. So then I got into construction and very quickly moved my way up, because as Steve Jobs says, look where everyone is going and head the opposite direction. And you'd be surprised how little, not to sound narcissistic, but how little, let me put it this way. let's say you're smart, let's say you're a bright kid, or let's say you want to have a bright future. Do you think of yourself as going into plumbing? How many people here think, hey, I could easily go to college and be a lawyer, or be a doctor, or be this. Nah, I'm going to be a plumber instead. Oh, they work with poo. Oh no, you work with poo. Stinky. Ooh woo. But that's not the case, right? I'm a plumber. As Antonio says, he's a plumber. And bet you, Antonio, right? You know, if you do new construction, you never see poo ever in your life. But you go be a doctor or whatever, a nurse, and you get to see a lot of poo there. And man, that is a nasty job. Ooh wee. Ooh. That is a way nastier job than plumbing. But what the point I'm trying to get at, and the realization to have, is that people still need plumbers. People still need people to run plumbing companies. And if the whole industry is filled with people, you know, let's be honest, low IQ people, you have a very, very, very easy way to move up, right? Very easy to, you know, move up the ladder. You know, not saying everyone there's IQ, not at all what I'm saying. You know, there's a lot of bright people. Again, I was a plumber. My dad, he had an architectural firm in the Soviet Union, and he works as a plumber in America. But he's a really bright guy. He's an absolutely bright guy. You know, but again, it's just there's different people. There's everyone's different. Some people have low IQ. Some people have high IQ. Some people have high creativity. Some people have low creativity. Some people have high empathy. Some people have low empathy. Everyone is different. But definitely construction is specific. Like for example, if it then right, so everything's a spectrum, right? So all the smart people try to go to college to be a doctor or engineer, and then the smart people that do go into construction, well, they all want to be an electrician, not a plumber. And that's the dilemma you have in construction. Is if you try to go be an electrician in plumbing, you'll notice there's a lot more smart people, and it's a bit more difficult to move up than if you just went straight to plumbing or something. So it's interesting seeing this dynamics. Or again, the key thing is look where everyone is heading and then go the opposite direction. You don't want to thank you very much, Ankh, for the gifts memberships, everyone. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. And yeah, thank you very much. Not sure if there's something I said you enjoyed, but yeah. I'm in service plumbing, as we say. Shit happens. Yeah. And my dad. So what's funny is my dad used to be in new construction, and he did high-rise structures, Disney resorts, everything. He did a lot of huge construction jobs, but the pay's so bad. There's a lot of hassle, a lot of headache, a lot of stress, so much stress. And then something happened. I forgot how happened. He decided to try service plumbing. There's way more money in service plumbing. And yeah, you do have to occasionally deal with poo, but again, it's not that bad. I don't know. Maybe I'm just saying that because I'm used to farming and I have to, and that, right? Farming, everyone thinks, oh, farming, they have to deal with, I'm a pig farmer. Oh, that must mean I'm, waist high pig shit, shoveling all day and sweating no. I literally never experienced pig shit unless I go specifically out to collect it for compost for my wife's garden. Like, otherwise I literally never deal with pig poo. Pigs are very smart animals. They do not pee. They do not go to the bathroom where to eat. Unlike cows. Like, you go to a cow stall and they have their trough where they eat, and there's a pile of poo right behind them that you have to scoop out every day. Yeah, that's a problem. Pigs don't have that problem. So again, thank you very much, Ankh. And yeah, I'm not sure what you think, Ankh, but I hope you relate with my experience. It's definitely construction. This is a very, very nice field to go in, and people are very nice. That's probably the biggest thing I miss as a company I used to work for. It was such a I originally did plumbing. Then I moved up. Then I did. I was equipment operator for an electric company. Then I jumped into doing working for a high-rise concrete company. So they did a lot of high-rise buildings and stuff. But so they originally hired me to, be a field engineer to do drafting, that whole, 9 yards. But what I really love about him, he's like, first, you need to work as a carpenter. You need to understand what it takes, what the guys on the field have to do to build these forms, pour the concrete, the whole 9 yards. And boy, I am so happy I did it. It was a hard learning experience. But wow, it learned me very well that now when I went to, or not now, but later when I went to be in the office and drawing up blueprints and all that stuff, I understood that if I make a mistake and I have to do a change, that and the guys on the field have to work an extra, overtime, on their weekends and work their ass off to fix my mistake. Like, that's a whole crew of people, losing time with their families and working their ass off to in the hot sun. And it gave me a very important understanding, that a lot of architects don't. Remember that one job we did, where we poured to like the 4th or 5th floor, and keep in mind, like, the garage level is up to the 4th floor, so everything beyond that, is obviously a residential building, so they have, something on top of the concrete. But anyways, poured up to the 4th or 5th floor, and they're like, hey, we want to change the color of concrete. And we're like, we already poured the floors for the garage, like, we can't. They couldn't understand. They couldn't comprehend, like, why we couldn't just change the color of the concrete that we already poured 5 floors at. And it doesn't make sense to change the color of concrete further, because the rest of everything else is going to have ceilings and carpets and cascades on top, right? There's not going to be any exposed concrete. So, like, what's the point of changing the color of concrete? The architect had a hard time understanding it. Or there's this ramp. There's this ramp from the 1st to 2nd floor, and it was curved. I was in charge of dealing with that. And in 1 week, I had to file 7 RFIs because they just kept giving us wrong dimensions. I knew the correct dimensions, but I was like, nope, it's their job. They have to give us the correct dimensions, because, that way, if a mistake happens or change happens later, they can't blame it on us. It has to be by them. They have to provide that. But eventually, after the 7th RFI, he was like, all right, provide them the numbers. So, because the guys in the fields were getting pissed off at me because they thought it was my fault. And it was a hard time explaining that to them. Like, hey, anyway, so that's how construction is, and why it's very important to work on the field first before, you start doing drafting. With your experience, what are some best DIY anode cathode materials for us limited budget commoners? Anodes are definitely graphites, gouging rods, and I need to file patents on how to connect them, and then open source that. So I keep saying soon, but soon. Cathode, typically stainless steel. Titanium, it just depends on the chemistry. Even the anode is like depends on the chemistry, right? It's not always a one all deal. Crunching numbers, so he became a plumbing. My dad's got a math scholarship. So smart. He didn't make any money with the math scholarship, so he became the plumber. That's so true. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot more to it than people realize, like again, I was a field engineer. What the hell does that mean? I was the guy that was actually in charge of building. Like, people don't understand this, but like when the architect submits out the architect does absolutely nothing when it comes to a project. Like, at least modern architects. I had a conversation with a guy that was, a traditional architect, or a esoteric architect, and I really agree with his definitions. But sadly, today's day and age, like, a modern architect has nothing to do with building. They have no clue what they're doing. And even in the drawings, when they submit, so you have the architect, gives it to a general contractor then gives it to subcontractors, so plumbers, electrician, the concrete guys, rebar guys, so on and so forth. So typically, they'll give it to a concrete guy, and then the concrete guy will actually subcontract his own rebar guy. So that's like it's like a branching chain, right? But when the architects give it to the general contractor, and the general contractor gives it to, let's say, the plumber or the concrete guy. It literally says in the blueprints in the very first 1 or 2 pages. If you read it, if a lot of people don't, but if you do, and I always do, every single blueprint, so I make sure I always read it. It will say you are or I am responsible for making sure those blueprints are correct. That's right. I am the one responsible. And oh my God, are there a bunch of mistakes? The architect doesn't care because I'm the one responsible. They just give a rough generic drawing, plus or minus, blah, blah, blah. I'm the one that actually has to review that drawing, redo it, recorrect it, resubmit it. So I actually correct my own art. In that case, with that company, I actually created my own set of blueprints for that. Actually, my own Revit drawings, my own blueprints for the guys on the field, my own CAD drawings, the whole 9 yards for our team to use. That was more accurate than the architects. I even remember one time the general contractor came into our office building, and he's like, "Where did you get that? How did you get that Revit drawing?" I'm like, "Drew it myself." It's like, "What do you mean? We haven't released it yet." I did it myself. And then later, a couple months later, the architect team finally released their Revit drawings, and it was so terrible, so many mistakes, so just the worst Revit drawing I've ever seen. I was concerned, like, hey, am I a good Revit drawer or not? And after I saw it, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a good Revit drawer. Actually, later the architectural firm actually wanted to hire me because they're like, oh shit, this kid's actually really good. So again, it's yeah, our architects are not what people think they are. Use graphite with moderate success. What do you mean? Provide some details, like what voltage did you run at? That's a quick question I can ask. Well, or also another question is, what issues did you have? Pig manure is great compost. A compost pile with a coil of water hose at the bottom to a random. It's great heat for the winter. Yeah, that interesting to try. Sadly, we don't have really much heat here in Florida. Or sorry, we don't have much of a winter here in Florida. We do have lots of heat. The pig manure is great because it makes very hardy compost since they're omnivorous growths. Biomes are very good. Yeah, designers should have to build what they design at least once. LOL. Exactly. So many times you notice yourself, on right? Like, you see a blueprints, or you talk to the arc, the whoever you send the RFI to, right? And they're like, what do you mean you can't build it like this? My dad has so many amazing stories about this. Maybe one day I should do a podcast with him just saying all his plumbing stories. But there was one time this Disney job actually, and this like, think about right above me, right? So there's this pipe that actually goes underneath. Now, what they wanted, okay, was the pipe to go from there and then out, the other side of the building or whatever, right? Or even another way to get actually even better, yeah, is like this way, right? So let's say there's a pipe somewhere over there at the very top of the ceiling, as it go all the way out, in between this beam and the floor. Now, pipes have to have a pitch. They can't go uphill. They can't go straight, right? Because water then won't drain. So you have to calculate, okay, what is the elevation? It starts there. How long is that? And then you can calculate, your pitch, your slope. And in that case, when you calculated it, the pipe would have ended up pretty much in the middle of that beam. And my dad was explaining that to him, and the architect didn't understand. He's like, what do you mean? Just move the pipe up. The team of Disney architects literally said that to him. Like, what are you talking about, dude? You stupid ass plumber, just put the pipe up. Duh. I hope if you're watching this, either I hope either I'm miscommunicating or you immediately understood the problem. Again, you need to have a slope, right? You need to have a slope for the pipe to go down. You can't just have it bend back up because all the shit's gonna get stuck in there. Like, it's. Anyways, so that's the deal. That's the problems you have to deal with, designers and architects. Yeah, it's really weird how in today's world, high qualified people are highly inept, and often vice versa. It's a problem with going to college. Really, I see it as again, the concrete company I worked for, they actually intentionally avoided hiring college graduates, and the reason why is because the best metaphor I can give it to is it's easier to repaint it's easier to paint a blank canvas than it is to repaint modern art. Right? So imagine you have two options. You can either start off with a blank canvas, right, a whiteboard, and start painting whatever it is you need to paint. Start training the person with whatever it is you need to train them. Or you start off with a board that has some ugly ass modern art, right? That someone that went to college, and you have to completely retrain them from the bottom up. Completely repaint that painting and first repaint it white, and then you can start. That's way more work. Okay, I hope that makes sense now. Why the problem we live in. A lot of these kids that go to college are just taught misinformation. Have you tried using 2 particle sizes for resin beads to increase interference area? Say factory bead size and 200 mesh size together. That's a very interesting question. I like that. I'm gonna post. I'm gonna do that as a video idea. That's a very good idea. That's a very good video idea. Thank you. Technically speaking, that's kind of what I do with my blended powder, right? Because in there, there's still a couple. I noticed there's still resin, like whole resin beads in there. It doesn't fully transform everything into a 200 mesh, right? So there's definitely a lot of variability to it, and it might be that's what makes it so effective, so useful. So that's a very great question you asked. So thank you very much. Trapper, that definitely is the next move for increasing the density of the ionic exchange. Yeah, other people are also agreeing. That's a very good idea. Thank you. Good job, Trapper. Are you responsible for mistakes other made before you too? I mean, it's your duty to identify them and submit to RFI. So yes, it is. It's 100% your duty. And if you have to, I mean, fundamentally, again, that's how it works, right? If you see there's a mistake in the blueprints, you have to identify that. You have to write up an RFI. You have to submit it to the architect or the engineer or whoever it is, and have them give you a proper response on what is the correct answer. You cannot just go based off the blueprints and say, oh, there's clearly a discrepancy here. I'm just going to arbitrarily pick one. Never, ever do that. Never. And I know a lot of shitty companies that did that. I remember this one time when I worked for an electric company, I identified a clear discrepancy in the blueprints where one cutout sheet showed one thing and another cutout and the 2D plan sheet showed another thing, and there's a pipe that's missing. I'm like, hey, there's a discrepancy here. They're, oh no, it's not. You don't know what you're talking about. You're just a kid. I'm like, no, there's a discrepancy here, and we had like 4 or 5 people. Those the foreman, the other foreman, the general manager, all of us, on this blueprint, I'm like showing them, okay, one pipe, next pipe, so we're all on the same page. And they're like, huh, yeah, there's a discrepancy. Oh, well, that's okay. I'm like, what do you mean? Are you going to submit an RFI? Nah, it's okay. I'm like, what? Again, for a Disney job site, I'm like, what? What do you mean? That's how companies are, a lot of them. Do you use FreeCAD, Blender, or Autodesk or SolidWorks? I prefer Fusion 360, so Autodesk, just because I tried FreeCAD, I couldn't. I know they recently updated their UI. I really, really want to be able to use FreeCAD, but I just can't. I can't. I'm sorry. The other problem is, again, I've been using Autodesk products my whole career, right? I've been using it for Revit, for AutoCAD, for Fusion 360, right? Every single thing in my career I've been using AutoCAD products for. So for me, it's just so seamless and easy to just use Autodesk products. I don't like a lot of them. I don't like how a lot of times they do stuff. I try to avoid playing into their game, but a lot of times, for me, it's just comfort. I hate SolidWorks. I actually kind of have a thing against people that like to use SolidWorks. Yeah, I don't like SolidWorks. I'll just keep it at that. I hope that makes sense. If not, one day I'll explain. Typically notice a pattern with people that like SolidWorks. Okay. Let's see. Very good points. Would you recommend CAD Query or LLM of choice? I've never used both of them. I've never used that, so I'm not sure. I've never used deterioration of the anode graphite in the solution, no access to real deterioration of the anode graphite in the solution, no access to a real lab or filtration, exact filters, amps, can't remember. It's been so long. It's open cell, no exchange membrane. So a couple problems. Yeah, you're always going to have exfoliation of the graphite. The voltage is really important because what I typically notice people have issues with graphite is they misuse it. They'll, for example, run at a very high current density. Current density is very, very important with graphite. You want to keep it at a very specific current density. So if you're running that thing at 12 volts, yeah, it's gonna completely disintegrate. There's also things you could do. For example, you can boil it in linseed oil and then expose it in the sun, and that'll actually help polymerize and like create this conduct. It's weird, but anyways, it helps with a lot of the degradation with graphite. When you understand colleges are businesses to make money, you'll understand why the modern education system fails. Yep. That is true. Yeah. For me, the best reason why I realized it fails is because college, professors are someone that graduated college or, left the field, whatever the industry, 20, maybe 30 years ago. And especially if they've never been in the industry, their knowledge is even more ancient, right? But anyways, point is, you have these professors that have 30-year-old knowledge that are reading textbook books and teaching you 30-year-old, sometimes even 50-year-old literature, right? There's a lot of school books that have so much misinformation today, and for middle schoolers and even elementary schoolers that we know of, right, that are like 50 years old, completely unchanged, completely not updated. That is being taught to students that are then gonna be also professors or whatever. Yeah, it's just this weird thing when you realize that, wait a minute, like colleges don't teach you modern information. There's no way better to get modern information than just go out and into the industry and learn hands-on. And at that point, then why go to college? What's the point of going to college if you could just, like, again, with plumbing, I was able to move from digging a trench to running my own job sites in a year to being a field engineer and drawing up blueprints and stuff in 2 to 3 years. Why go to college for 4 years, get out of that in debt, to then work for some company as an intern, right? For how many years? To then get a very, very basic start at life, and I then have to pay off, a college student loan for the next 20 years of my life. Like, why not just go straight to a company? There's many companies want to teach you from scratch, like I already said. Have you ever tried graphite fiber feel for memory support? No, I haven't. 7 or 8 floors pancake. I'm not sure what you mean, Unc. I just went to Autodesk or some FreeCAD. It's very hard to transfer FreeCAD sketches to Autodesk. Do you still use AutoCAD or FreeCAD, Unc? What do you think about the two? Like, what do you use more right now? Trapped 100%, trust you on the right path. Tinker better in SolidWorks. FreeCAD has gotten incredibly better over the last 10 years, but there's a learning curve over its quirks. It's very functional nowadays. Yeah, I definitely noticed a lot of open source software like the last couple years specifically. I wouldn't say, I don't know about 10 years, but definitely in the last couple years have coincidentally all started coming out with newer features. And my theory of that is, with AI and ChatGPT and all that stuff, they're just using a lot more in coding, which makes sense, right? It's open source project. These people are not, barely getting paid, if paid anything, and for them, like, they're able to use ChatGPT to quickly change up the UI or whatever really quickly. Then why not, right? So definitely supportive of that. But I just found that interesting. A lot of open source projects are recently coming out with a lot of UI stuff. OpenSCAD, I'm curious, variously code your geometry. Oh, yeah, I'm not too I haven't done a lot of that. I don't know. I just don't like that, coding your own geometry and stuff. Like, I know a lot of people like that. It's really nice because you can create a model. You can create a model that can later be very easy to change, right? You just have, a couple of parameters, boom, and then you change the whole design automatically. So it's definitely nice to do that way. But 99% of the time, I don't model like that. Actually, almost all my Fusion 360 models, I turn off parametric modeling because I like to just free model, and I do this thing once and that's it. Like, rare. And the problem is when I do need to change something, almost always it's such a major design change that I have to redo it from scratch. So that's a problem. Like, I might as well just completely start off with a new design. FreeCAD has parametric modeling bugs, which is funny because function ordering is fundamentally what parametric modeling is about. Yeah, I get it. It's definitely hard to combine that with UI. Again, I did Revit, so that's very similar to parametric modeling. Like with Revit, you have to code a building. You don't just free draw it. And in that case, that's very important. That's very useful because if you need to do a change, and there's always changes, there's always RFIs, there's always right, there's always changes when it comes to construction. So with that sort of thing, 100%, right? A big project, 100% needs to be done that way. But for small projects, when I'm just doing basic shit, like I don't want to have the hassle of trying to code everything. They have access to potentiometers or potentiostats that can run EIS studies. No, I don't. I do not. To Autodesk after starting with FreeCAD, it's very hard to transfer FreeCAD scripts to Autodesk. I wish they had a conversion. Autodesk 360, Fusion 360, FreeCAD does have some nice array features. I did the latest update and have to learn stuff all over again. Components have disappeared. Yeah, I've heard there's a lot of changes at FreeCAD recently. Whenever I'm stuck in FreeCAD with something I want to do, but I can't figure out how to do it, ask Google Gemini and it knows how to do it. It's pretty amazing. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I haven't done it in a while, so I know even with Fusion 360, I get frustrated with it a lot of times. And again, if I go back into 3D modeling heavily, yeah, maybe. But right now, I'm doing such basic stuff. It's like I don't want to go through the whole curve of relearning stuff. And with Fusion 360, I just buy a student license. They even have a really cheap startup license I can buy. That's like I think like $150 for 3 years. So yeah. What else? I now play with mixed metal electrodes, but they're expensive. Yeah, they're nice for certain things, but I prefer to avoid mixed metal oxide electrodes. Pro tip is to save the prompts for scripts that generates their part geometry. That's a cool idea. Yeah, if you're just doing parametric modeling, just or not parametric, but if you're doing the code modeling, just copy certain aspects because fundamentally, right, like a cube to make a cube, it's the same thing. I like that idea a lot. Thank you. I mean, it's like that with any form of coding. You always just copy things. It'd be a kiddie script or a script kiddie. It's copying people's scripts. Again, like I said, it's definitely uses to it. It's definitely very important to learn. And if you're going to get into it seriously, I definitely 100% get that. But for simple shit, I'm not going to read it. I'm not going to learn it from scratch. I am not going to learn it from scratch. I have this nitrogen generator I gotta figure out. No clue what I'm gonna do with it. I don't even know if it works. I have no clue if this even works. Spent like $300 or $500 on it. I forgot. Came from a lab. Why aren't you closing? Why are you not closing? Any other questions for me to answer? Pro tip, save the pro. Yeah, you can choose language height. Yep. Yeah, again, guys, if you have any questions you want to ask, feel free to ask. Probably gonna finish up soon, so feel free to ask before I leave. And as always, I do not know when I'll be back because I'm always random. Today I need to clean the lab, so it was a good opportunity to discuss and talk. Did I miss your new system of making membranes? No, not yet. I haven't. I mean, I wouldn't say it's new. It's still in the patent, right? So it's in the patent. It's just an optimizing the process where I got it to be very reliable. That's the part that I'm very excited about launching. So, which is in, which is out. Oh, this is in, this is out. Okay, got it. Connecting my vacuum pump here. Back to this XRF that I got from a friend, which you guys are gonna see at Open Source. So I'm gonna bring 2 friends along. Well, technically 4, including my wife is 5. It's gonna be 6 people in total. Okay, including me, 6 people in total. Kind of electrochemical analytical analysis instrument do you have access to? All I have is the XRF. That's it. It's definitely a huge problem. Yeah, as Paradox said, I just have XRF right now. Rigaku NEXDE. Trying to fix a wavelength dispersive XRF, which is this huge monstrosity. But beyond that, I want to get an ICP or ICP OES, as Paradox said. In terms of chemical resistance, I'm assuming these membranes will work really well in battery chemistries. Yeah, they work really, really well in that. In fact, there's opportunities to use them in existing battery technologies and the membrane separators, because fundamentally all batteries are a form of a redox flow battery. Like this, all batteries are a redox flow battery in some way or another. It's just a redox flow battery is a more, it's hard to say, it's a more I don't know how to describe it. You know, redox flow battery, 2 electrodes, membrane in the middle, solution you're pumping through, right? That's electrolyte. It's the solution. With an ion exchange, or not ion exchange, with an ion battery, like a lithium-ion battery, same thing. You have 2 electrodes, you have the electrolytes, and then you have a membrane. That in the lithium-ion case, they just use a separator. So they'll just use a, polypropylene sheet separator that has little holes poked through. Just not an ion exchange membrane, it's just, a porous separator. They obviously have to do that because they have to roll up, square feet into this tiny, electrolysis cell, right? Or not electrolysis, into this tiny battery. They have to, roll out a giant sheet and squeeze into this tiny footprint. But with a ion exchange membrane, you can replace the porous, the permeable membrane that they have and end up with a much better battery that has a much faster charge rate, much better chemical stability, many benefits. So yeah, I hope that explains. I'm moving all this stuff out here because, oh no, did I turn this off? I did. We need to put some sort of valve on this P10 gas for the wavelength dispersive XRF. Luckily, it barely uses any, but definitely not fun seeing it on. I bought this thing a year ago and I still have it. It's not too expensive too. I think it's like $300 to fill this. So, but I have to renew. I actually have to renew the. I have this on rental, this gas tank, so I have to renew that. And that's gonna be over $200, so not too bad. Because there's like a hazmat fee and then the rental fee and all that. Oops, that fell back down. I'm throwing shit up there for me to reorganize later. I promise I'm not gonna forget it up there. I'm gonna reorganize it. I already started cutting shelves to do things. Oh, we got a couple questions. There was a bit of talking back and forth. Noting to analyze the electrochemistry itself. Yeah, I really want to be able to analyze the electrochemistry itself, but equipment, time, money. I was thinking these membranes could be good sent for zinc iodine batteries to stop the shuttle effect. Correct, they can. They'd be really good for that. I kind of don't like zinc iodine batteries because fundamentally the elements are expensive. I prefer ferric chloride batteries or some sort of sodium-based battery. My favorite is just ferric chloride. It can't beat ferric chloride. Why is this up here? Oh, that's for the light up there. I don't even use it. I don't even use this. Why are you here? I don't even use you. I'll probably go up there first and see what the hell's connected to it. I think I tied it off somewhere also. Where the hell are you? Okay. More extension cords. Yay. One of the next things I'm probably going to do is start running more outlets in this building because I'm tired of all these extension cords and I want the floor to be clean. And I can't have the floor clean if I have extension cords everywhere. It's hard to sweep up. Okay, let's see. Oh boy, I missed a bunch of questions. I'll try to skim through. I'm super interested in desalination of these membranes. What configuration should be most optimal? Reverse osmosis, drum vacuum filter. Yeah, reverse osmosis filtration, and then the brine system. You just run that through. Earlier in the video, earlier in the stream, I talked about this, which you have the negative electrode, cation exchange membrane, anion exchange membrane, cation exchange membrane, and then positive electrode. And what you do is you have sulfuric acid solution here. You have your brine input here. Sulfuric acid just acts as a conductive, electrolyte. So don't worry about it. But point is, what ends up happening is you have your brine in here. Sodium hydroxide is produced here, and then hydrochloric acid is produced in there in situ. You don't have to worry about any sort of UV thing. There's many other ways to solve this problem. There's other ways that you can run it directly through an ion exchange membrane to end up producing fresh water. It's weird. Anyways, there's a couple of different ways you can look it up. I know we got this much elements from possibly how much was it? Mental analysis on your feedstocks tells your yield rates. Yep, it's called a mass balance input, which allows you to fully understand how much inputs and outputs to do. Yep. A potentiostat would definitely be helpful to evaluate the membrane characteristics. Potentiostat. Look that up. Yeah, I might buy one of these. They're not too expensive. brand new. They're like $800. So thank you. I'll look into this. Is a continuous refining unit self-regulated, or do you have to tune the voltage in operation? Depends on what you're trying to do. I mean, most of the time now it's self-regulated. But even if you have to tune, I would there's ways to electrochemically, add sensors and monitor that automatically. Cheap battery alternatives to lithium-ion battery technologies, super important energy storage technologies. Yeah, I think you need to understand energy storage as a time thing. So there's not going to be any sort of direct. So the best alternative to lithium-ion batteries is sodium-ion batteries. Okay, but here's the whole dilemma. If you need power for a very short period of time, right? You need a lot of power for, in a second or two. That's what a capacitor is for. Okay, so if you need a lot of power in less than a minute, that's what you use a capacitor. If you need a lot of power for a couple minutes, maybe an hour, you use lithium-ion batteries or ion batteries, sodium-ion batteries, right? Whatever, traditional battery storage. If you need a lot of power over a couple of days, you use a redox flow battery. Okay, so each one of these has their disadvantages and advantages. So supercapacitors output a lot of power, right? They output a lot of power in a very short period of time, but they don't store a lot over a long period of time. Ion batteries, sodium, lithium-ion batteries, are very good in the middle game, right? They store pretty good power, and let's say you need power tools, a car, whatever. They're pretty nice for that, right? You use it for an hour to a couple hours. Great for that. Redox flow batteries are very nice for long-term storage. You're able to store a lot of electricity for very, very cheap, but turning that electricity back into power, right, energy immediately, you need a lot of surface area, and to do effectively, it requires, I mean, you can do it, but it's better and easier just to use a lithium-ion battery if you need. That's my philosophy, right? So a redox flow battery that has a fuel cell capacity of, let's say, 2 kilowatts, because the average home uses 1 kilowatt. So it'll have a fuel cell at 2 kilowatts, but you might have in there 200 kilowatts of energy storage. And then you'll have a lithium-ion battery, at 20 kilowatts, that'll be able to charge up the solar panels really quickly, balance out any sort of energy fluctuation. Let's say you turn on the microwave and a hair dryer, and someone's using instant water heater to shower all at the same time. That lithium-ion battery will power that. But you're not going to do that all day long, right? You're just going to do that for like 5-10 minutes. So you get the point. Then the rest of the day, the redox flow battery is able to supplement, because on average, most households do 1 kilowatt. Good luck with your journey. Thank you. Is a regular constant current supply enough? Yes. I mean, all constant current or constant voltage power supplies are basically the same thing. But yeah, whoop whoop. Thanks to USA, we have 29,000 China-made Tesla in Canada. Building a homebrew potential ESS should be pretty easy, but IES capability will require a bit more thought. Again, I kind of avoid trying to DIY everything. You just buy some. Though you're saying good commercial potential harvesters are usually many thousands of dollars, but they do come up with used markets. Yeah, I'll try to find something used. If you can, please, I'll again drop down my Discord server link. If you can, please join here, and that'd be a really great thing to talk about long term, because definitely something that's I can analyze these membrane performances, because there's a lot of different tests and options and varieties that I need to do, and I just first, I don't have the equipment, and I don't really have the time to look into what kind of equipment I need and so forth. So that's something you can help out with and recommend. I'd really, really help, because that seems like you have way more experience than I do. Excellent Q&A session, Robert. Always good to hear your thoughts. Thank you for the $10 or £10. What kind of sensors might be good for feedback or regulations for the CRU or CMU? Very great question. pH, electric conductivity. Those are the two most common ones, and from there you can get most of your things you need. Electric conductivity, I'd say, is the most obvious one. Another one is I forgot the name of it, but it's a pretty much put a third electrode in there and acts like a standard and allows you to measure some other stuff. I forgot. I'm getting tired. What time is it? It's almost 9 o'clock. Yeah, I need to go to sleep soon. I use ferrochrome to touch my cells. Yep. I don't want to leave the well. You don't use the if you leave the stainless steel negatively charged, or if you're just saying in general. I don't know. Kind of getting tired right now. But yeah, typically, even though a lot of acids will, etch stainless steel, if you just use it as the negative electrode, it'll actually be able to withstand it and the it'll have a cathode protection on it. Why is this not closing? Why is it not going down? I don't get it. Someone wants to help me fix this machine. It's a nitrogen generator. I don't even know if it's working. You're more than welcome to come visit my lab. I think that closed. Whatever. One side closed. I'll need to open that up soon again. Flow battery is a regular battery, but 1 dimension higher. I want to say 1 dimension higher. It's just rolled out. And then you have the electrolyte as pumped, because the electrolyte is actually what stores that energy. Pine Instruments are one name I'm familiar with that has good instruments. They use for reference electrodes for power supply. It's basically a form of a potential set. I do have a silver, I think it's a silver chloride, I forgot, a silver reference electrode that I can use, but I haven't really done any of that. It's a 309L screen for both anode and no, you do not want to use for both anode or cathode. But for what are you doing? What are you using that for? For a flow battery or for what? But yeah, anyways, anything. You definitely want to use graphite for the anode. Let me just return this fitting. Oh, just to test HHO. Yeah, still I would just get. You're gonna eat away your stainless steel very quickly. You're gonna mess up with the solution, right? Because now you're gonna have a bunch of. Because remember, stainless steel has chrome in it, so you now have a chromium toxic sludge that you have to deal with. Yeah, it's definitely not something you want to deal with. That stainless steel, it's a lot more dangerous than people think. Again, that's a very great example of how electrochemistry can be a lot more dangerous than people realize. Oh, just electrolyzing stainless steel, right? Nope. That has a lot of chrome in it. And chrome is very, very not fun when you convert it into in oxides or into a salt, which basically a compound that can be dissolved in water. Yeah. Flow batteries are very interesting. They allow you to decouple of the energy storage volume and power area. Yeah, exactly. I love them. I love redox flow batteries a lot. I love them. It's not much to say. They're great. They're actually the reason I originally got electrochemistry. Flow batteries. It was for flow batteries that I got into making ion exchange members. I made my very first flow battery using ferrochloride and my very first ion exchange membrane was a Kevlar. It was technically not ion exchange membrane. It's, you know, again, a type of porous membrane. I think he might have ion exchange properties. I forgot. Anyways, point is, that was what I used as my separator, and it worked. And I was able to make a little. I use these little cups, the cups I always use for my my ion exchange membrane test. I made 4 cups like that. Oops, charged it up, and then discharged it through an 18650 battery capacitor meter, and it was a stationary cell, so there's no flow, you know, movement. There's no pump, so it's just in these cups, and I was able to get 1 amp hour at 4 points whatever volts. So it was really nice. You know, very cheap, very easy, very great. There's a lot of dirt, a lot of sand, because I live in Florida. We don't got dirt, we got sand. Do they make a porous graphite? Yes, they do. Yeah, that does exist, but it's kind of expensive. I'm still waiting on Nighthawk to release this video before I can talk about a really good way to use to make your own porous glassy carbon. He came up with a really cheap source. Like I said, I'll just wait for him to come up with the video, and then I'll talk about it, because it's something I was looking into for a while now, but the source he got it for, or the way he made it, was very, very unique. Some more I want to talk about it, but I can't. I'm trying to avoid saying more. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great example of how, you know, us YouTubers can collaborate and work together and come up with really, really great stuff together. If only YouTubers were willing to collaborate. Yeah, it's sad. A lot of them are scared to I'm some grifter or whatever, but what can I say? What else we got going on? Depending on the purpose, you can use carbon sheets or woven carbon fiber. Yeah, I've heard a lot of people say that using carbon fiber, but I haven't never tested it. I know it's conductive. The question is how conductive it is. Definitely worth a try. But yeah, I'd like to come help for a couple of weeks. I'm in Northern Michigan. Could definitely help each other out. I'll email you, tell you my background, what I'm thinking. Yeah, that would be really, really nice. I'm in near Lakeland, Florida. So a lot of stuff I don't really have a lot I can offer you. So yeah, I don't really have a place for you to live or anything or sleep. But yeah, I definitely would prefer people in Florida. You know, if you want to come by for a weekend or whatever, there's a lot we could do. For what I need help with, get that thing working. I need to work on a wavelength dispersive. All electrical stuff I need to do in here. It's always stuff I need to do. So if you want to help out, that'd be a huge help. Hopefully I can get to a point I can start hiring people. But until then, help volunteer. That'd be really nice. As I volunteer a lot myself. At least I hope you can see that. What are these boxes I need to sell? I don't need these. I need to put up lights in the second floor. It's so dark in here. I have a lot of material. That's the nice thing is there's a lot of stuff to do that I don't really need to spend money on because I already have the stuff. I just need to, do it. So that's what's nice about that. But yeah, I'm finishing up all this. I'm gonna do tomorrow. Should I bring it? Yeah, I'll just bring this upstairs while I'm at it. Oh my God, it's heavy. Jesus. Oops. I learned about you through Nighthawk and Light. Yeah. That's why I find, when I did that thing with Nighthawk and Light, the when he released that video almost every day, not almost every day, literally every day until that video kind of started dying in views, but literally every day I would get emails from people saying, hey, I thought you were a scammer, I thought you were a grifter, I thought you were whatever, until I saw you at Nighthawk and Light. And that made me realize, oh, it doesn't matter how many videos I release, how many patents I open source, how much technology I release, how many videos I do. People are going to be skeptical until there's third-party validation. That's why I'm so adamant and pushing for tech ingredients to do some sort of collab, because that's the most important thing for this technology, is other YouTubers to be able to show it working. Otherwise, people aren't going to catch on. I definitely commend you for your efforts. We'll connect. Probably set up a live out of my vehicle for a short time. Again, I really appreciate any sort of help, Kevin. I wonder if the new membranes tech can be used in the synthesis of chemicals. Of course. Yeah, of course they can. Yep. There's a lot of organic chemistry they can be used in, pharmaceutical stuff, for making medicines and so forth. Yeah, there's a lot of uses for these. You need to understand, okay, you need to understand this very well. All chemistry is the relationship of two molecules and their electrons. Okay, is the relationship of electrons between two molecules. Does that make sense? So you have two atoms, the electrons, or there's electrons orbiting both of them, right? How those electrons behave between the two atoms determines chemistry. Once you understand that, then you'll realize, oh, all of chemistry is electricity. So if there's anything you want to do that has to do with chemistry, which means changing how those two molecules behave or are shaped or whatever, you have to mess with those electrons, which fundamentally is electricity. Now, if you do it directly, so let's say you just get salt water and you just electrolyze it, put some electrolysis in, right? Well, you're not gonna be able to control much, because fundamentally one side's going to produce sodium hydroxide, the other side's going to produce chlorine. They're going to both react because one's an acid, one's a base, and boom, you created bleach or whatever, right? You don't really achieve much, or some sort of sodium hypochlorite. The key thing what ion exchange membranes allow you to do is control which ions, which atoms go where and how. That's the key thing to being able to control chemistry directly with electricity, is ion exchange membranes, because they unlock how exactly that's going to happen. Do you want sodium hydroxide or, hydrochloric acid? Do you want chlorine gas? Do you want bleach? Do you want? There's so many different types of sodium hypochlorites. Which redox state do you want? All of that is possible with ion exchange membranes, because they're able to control how those flows happen, how those reactions happens, which goes where, how goes what. There's no other way to do it more directly. And again, people typically think, oh, well, that's limited to acids and metals and tigers. Oh my, no, that's everything. Everything. Again, iron is my best example I love to give. A lot of people think, oh, if you want to make iron, if you want to make steel, you need temperature, you need heat, like that one guy from the World Economic Forum said. That one top guy that managed to run a huge company, and he doesn't understand something as basic as steel. Oh, it's an energy problem. It's a heat problem. That's what he said word by word. It's a joule problem. When people talk about joules, they typically mean heat, right? But it's not a joule problem. It's a reducing iron oxide rust into iron metal, right? So it's a reduction process. That's an electron issue, not a temperature issue. You don't just magically heat up a bunch of rust and boom, you get metal. Not at all. You have to first turn that into molten rust, and then you add carbon, and that reacts with the iron oxide and produces CO2 and rust. But then you have a bunch of slag because ask any chemist, they're going to tell you half of chemistry is cleaning up the mess you just made. For our traditional chemistry, electrochemistry, that's not a problem. For traditional chemistry, yes, that's the case. So because you just added all this oxygen, you added all this carbon, now you have what's called pig iron, right? Now you have pretty much mostly iron, but a shitload of carbon you don't want. So now you have to re-inject oxygen and some other stuff to form slag to clean up your impurities and create a cleaner form of steel. Right, so you just added carbon to remove oxygen, and now you just added oxygen to remove the carbon. Each time you do that, that's inefficiencies, that's waste, that's you know, it would have been better for you to turn that carbon into electricity, and then run the electrolysis cell with that electricity to reduce the steel. That's more efficient. And with the electrochemical process, you're able to do that at room temperature. And there's so many benefits with that. Now you can use intermittent power because you're not stuck with a giant kiln that has to operate 24/7, because if you turn the thing off, it's going to take you a week to heat it back up. No, you can use solar panels because you don't care if you turn it on or off. Now you have access to electricity sources that are basically free at certain times of the day. You have these huge ass electrolysis units producing steel at enormous rates, very cheaply, very effectively, using very cheap energy, using cheaper inputs, because now we're able to utilize cheaper inputs instead of being dependent off high-grade inputs, because of the whole cleanup steel process, right? I go on and on and on. It changes everything. Where did I stop at? I'm on a mission like you are. I see your passion. My mission got delayed for a while, but you make it possible. I'm glad to help. You can make them to make a Cl from salt water for starters and sodium hydroxide. You can get all the way to sodium chloride, sodium. Yep, exactly. Well, yeah, you can do it without membrane. You're 100% correct. But you can't make hydrochloric acid and sodium hydroxide without a membrane. Right? You do need a membrane for that. So, yeah, I'm just giving examples of how the reason I went down that path was by simply changing the configuration a little bit. You're still using electricity and brine, right? You're not adding any different chemicals. You're not doing anything else. You're still using the same thing, electricity and the input. That's it. But simply changing the configuration by either adding or an ion exchange membrane or 2 or even 3, you're able to have completely different results, completely different chemical configurations. Both are just atoms with electrons more or less. The phase change is the harder part to make steel from wet process. No, it's not, temp. That's a very no. Tisk temp. Not true. Look it up. Do not. That is the biggest problem with limiting yourself from coming up with new ideas, is when you assume something. You assume that that it's very expensive to do the phase change. That's not true. It only costs $50 in energy to melt 1 ton of steel. $50. It costs $450 to reduce iron oxide to iron metal. The expensive part is not in the phase change, is not in melting it. It's in reducing it. Melting it, the phase change is not at it. I know it sounds crazy. It sounds counterintuitive. I know it sounds like in your soul, you're hearing what I'm saying. You're like, no way you can melt 1 ton of steel for $50. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. That is also why scrap steel, depending on the grade, what's interesting is it depends on the grade, but scrap steel costs almost $450 for example, cast iron, right? If it's like if you go to scrapyard, cast iron costs a lot more than scrap sheet metal or processed steel. Why? Because processed steel has rust, a lot of rust. It has paints, it has garbage, it has this, it has this, it has this. So it has to go through the same cleanup. So sheet steel or finished steel, whatever, right, has to go through the same process pretty much as iron ore. So the cost of that is all actually very similar to iron ore. But doing the but simply melting down, already clean cast iron, well, again, you just have to spend $50 in electricity and done. You don't have to go through the whole process of cleaning up. That's why it's so much cheaper. Or that's why it's so much more expensive, actually. That's why, they would actually much more prefer the cast iron because they just have to melt it down versus trying to clean that shit up. How did I miss this one? Is it the same length? No, it's just shorter or same thing. Yes. Up ahead. How long are we going to do this stream, guys? That is fantastic. Thank you for explanation. You're welcome. The phase change is the harder part to make steel from wet process. Again, no. You're not solid versus liquid phase, but the iron carbon phase. What do you mean? Okay, I get that it requires thermal cycling, but it doesn't matter which process you use. It still requires thermal cycling. Doesn't matter if you start off with iron ore, if you start off with clean ore, you still have to do the thermal cycling. So that's why it actually doesn't matter. Also, a lot of that thermal cycling is because of impurities. If you're able to start off with cleaner impurities, those thermal cycles are a lot easier to do. And creating certain alloys and high-grade alloys are a lot easier to do because now you're starting off with cleaner ingredients, which the electrochemical process with the wet process is able to achieve. I am finishing up, guys, so I think I'm going to finish up. I'm probably going to answer one, maybe two. No, come on, guys. One or two more questions. Oh, it's almost 3 hours. Yeah. Let me finish up. Gonna shower, eat, sleep. Any questions? Anything you guys want to ask? I still need to ship out this order. I'll do it first thing tomorrow morning. Either way, I can't head out, so I have to wait for the post office to open. But yeah. Anyways, thank you guys very much for watching. Thank you for the donations. Thank you very much for the support. If you want to help out, the best way to help out, as usual, is to annoy and harass and bully your favorite YouTuber into covering my technology. Please, jokes aside, don't, just politely ask, drop a comment, be like, hey, this is cool technology. Have you checked it out? 1, 2, 3, 4, 20, 30, 50, probably not that much. It probably just needs a dozen or so people. Eventually, they're going to be like, what is this weird thing? What is this weird thing these commenters are talking about? So that's the best way to, yeah. Kevin also brought up a great example. Then also by starting off with pure or being able to produce very high-grade steel, you're able to produce very high-grade steel. So, everyone has a problem with Chinese steel, right? And there's issues. Well, this process is able to produce old steel, as again, anybody that's worked with steel, if you work with old steel, you're like, whoa, this is really nice stuff. Like, this is not, any modern steel is really terrible, and any, offshore steel is even worse, right? So this is able to produce it a lot cheaper. But yeah, anyways, thank you guys for I don't know about using Gemini, Matt, because yeah. But anyways, anyways, I'm gonna get off, guys. Thank you for watching, and yeah. stay subscribed. Please subscribe. Let anyone know. Have a good night and join the Discord server again. I'm gonna drop it down. Join the Discord server. That's the best way to talk to me, reach out to me, communicate with me. Share ideas. I have my website store. You can do a one-on-one consultation over there. Buy my products. Make your own membranes, and I'll do my best to release more videos soon. All the products I make is stuff that's open sourced and you can buy. So anyways, have a good night, guys. Bye. And